Every SAT grammar rule in around 15 minutes. Rule number 1. Periods are equal to semicolons. Here are two independent clauses. Independent clause means that the sentence can kind of stand alone. Rishabh is a great guy, can stand alone. He has 100,000 subscribers, can stand alone. To put them together, we either need to use a period, duh, or we can use a semicolon, because periods are equal to semicolons on the digital SAT. As you can see, semicolon, period. Next, before conjunctive adverbs. I have no idea what a conjunctive adverb is, but all you need to know is when you're using a word like however, therefore, or another word like that where it's kind of like this transition-y sort of word, all you need to do is put a semicolon right before it. Or you could put a period because once again, periods are equal to semicolons. So Rishabh is a great guy, standalone sentence. However, it seems like you're not subscribed. Standalone sentence. Put them together, you can either use a period in between and capitalize that H on the however, or put them together and make it not capitalized. Next, tricky sentence boundary questions. This is also relating to those periods. Which one's correct? Rishabh Jain is a Harvard student who makes videos in his free time. In 2024, he hit 100,000 subscribers. Rishabh Jain is a Harvard student who makes videos in his free time. In 2024, he hit 100,000 subscribers. I think it's pretty clear the second one sounds correct, and this is going to be a common theme throughout this video, sounding these questions out in your head and developing a good voice inside of yourself for the SAT is a great way to do this. And the way to do it is to practice. I'm going to give you some tips on how to practice as well. But as you guys can see here, this is a sentence boundary. It's pretty obvious here that if we just have the in 2024 that's like not relating to this past sentence, we need to split those apart. So now, as you guys can see here, this is the correct answer. Let's move on to the next rule. But before we do that, this video is just going to be rapid fire grammar rules and some tips and advice. I'd highly encourage you not to skip around, and I would highly appreciate if you could like and comment so this video gets like boosted in the algorithm. There's a ton of random videos made by prep companies online, and they're just not very good. They give really generic advice. I try to give high value, actionable tips that you can actually use. By the end of this video, you will probably have a couple points extra on your SAT. And this is thanks to Erica Meltzer, who's the master of SAT reading and writing prep. I've gone through her materials and condensed it into every grammar rule that you need to know for the SAT in this video. Rule number 2 is that colons are equal to dashes. And you can use these in several ways. One is before a list. And I think a lot of you guys will probably know this, that if you have this list, oftentimes you can use a colon before it. But there's a couple different ways that you can do it. And some of them are not correct, as you can see here. So I'd encourage you to pause the video and just quickly try to see which one is correct or which ones are correct, hint, hint. So as you can see here, there are two that are correct. Either you can use a colon right here or a dash right here because colons are equal to dashes. But the way that you can use these incorrectly is if you put a random word that is just not right. Rishabh has interests in colon neuroscience, bioengineering, education, science communication. The colon needs to come after kind of you finish describing what you're about to describe because the list is completely, on its own here and it's dependent on what you say right before. So you have to describe what that's going to be. Rishabh has interest in 4 areas. Neuroscience, bioengineering, education, and science communication is the way to do it. Not saying such as colon or in colon. This is a common mistake made by a lot of students. You can also use these before an explanation. Quoting Erica Meltzer here, when a colon or dash separates two sentences, it is identical to a period or semicolon. So more equivalencies here. When Rishabh hit 100,000 subscribers, his channel was famous. Students across the world flocked to his advice online. Now, arguably, you could say, hey, let me, put a period or a semicolon here. And yeah, you can actually do that. It is identical here to separate these two sentences. But what you can do for explanation questions in particular, where you have something and then you're explaining it further, is to use a colon or a dash. Rule number 3 is comma and fanboys. And just knowing this, if you don't know it already, will improve your EBRW score by 10, 20, 30 points. So basically, right here, you'll often see the word but or so. Rishabh won science fair in high school, so he founded sciencefair.io. But what they're going to do to try to trip you up is not put a comma before it. So whenever you use a fanboys, And the fanboys words are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Whenever you use one of these words, just memorize fanboys, fanboys, fanboys. You have to have a comma right before it, otherwise the sentence is incorrect. And, as you guys can see here, there's a comma, comma, so these are correct sentences. Now, once again, I'm pleased asking for your support. No other channel has these high quality to the point videos, and if you subscribe or leave a like or comment something, it will greatly boost this video in the algorithm, so thanks so much. Rule number 4 is for commas and dependent clauses. So dependent clauses are converse to independent clauses, which I told you about at the beginning of this video, because dependent clauses are not really standalone, right? If you just say it has buildings from many different areas, what is it, right? What are you referring to? So it's dependent on the clause that we have right before here, which is because London is very old, that is, they're dependent on each other. And in order to separate them, what we can do here is put a comma in between them. So because London is a very old city, it has buildings from many different eras. And as you can see, I almost subconsciously paused there. And that's a good indication that there's going to be a comma. So whenever you're sounding something out in your head, if you're pausing, you probably need some sort of like punctuation there. It's a period to indicate the start of the new sentence or something like that. But in this case, because we have these dependent clause, we have to separate them using this comma. Rule number 5 is about transition words and phrases. And so there are a ton of different transition words, these in addition, moreover, secondly, however, nevertheless, and all of these different words, right? And you'll be asked to fill in a missing word on your test. It'll just have this underline and say, fill in this word. And you could use multiple words. Sometimes, you could have 2 words and they might be grammatically correct, but they might not make sense. So if you're trying to contradict something like, Rishabh has 100,000 subscribers. Blank, he is still not super well known outside, right? It's clear there you need a contradictor there that he has 100,000 subscribers but he still doesn't. So there you would do a however, nevertheless, or in contrast or something like that. Rule number 6 is about non-essential information. So if you're reading a sentence and you notice, this type of question where it gives you these choices, and there's this phrase that's repeated, which is a very old city, which you can just delete from the sentence and it still makes sense. Like London has some extremely modern parts. That is a standalone sentence. But it can be, deleted. You can have this delete this, which is a very old city, and the sentence still makes sense. But if you delete has some extremely modern parts, then the sentence doesn't make sense, right? So take that part that is non-essential information and make sure you surround it by either a comma, comma, or a dash, dash. Now, you might be wondering, Rishabh, why is this one incorrect? It has a dash and a comma. You can't mix and match. You have to either do the dash, dash, or the comma, comma. Now, SAT practice tips before we get into the rest of the rules. One is I'd highly encourage you to head to the link down below, and I'll have a free PDF handout for downloading all 16 of these rules. You can print them out, and you can click the link in the description to get access to that. It's pretty simple. You can just have it on your desk when you're practicing. Now, speaking of practicing, I have literally had hundreds of thousands of students use my advice for the SAT and ACT. And one of the things that I preach a ton is the morning of your test, when you're going to your car ride or your test center, right? Read these passages out loud. Just have some of them on the notes app of your phone or pull up a PDF real quick and just practice reading them out loud and enunciate stuff and practice reading them in your head. This will help you a lot. It'll warm up your brain before this section, which is pretty difficult. Now, I'm going to talk about a company I recently partnered with called Acely. They were the sponsor of the last video and this one. I partnered with them because they are the best possible way to improve your score via practicing. I always talk about how you should learn these concepts by, as I said, right, taking these 15 grammar rules, but you need to practice them and put them into play. And some kids will say, oh, I'm practicing by spending $4,000 at this education company and going in person every week. But all they're doing is, providing this tutoring where they're really charging you per hour. So they want to take more time. They're incentivized to do that, to take your money. A better way is to use this digital age that we live in and use this tool called Acely. And I only partner with companies that I think could, genuinely help my audience here. I've been contacted by 10 plus of these SAT prep companies, and I've denied all of them until I encountered Acely, because this is exactly what I was looking for, something that uses tech. It uses AI and it pairs it with the world's largest question bank here with unrivaled SAT preparation compared to these other tools here. You can practice these questions with technology, AI, right? I love AI. I do it all the time in my research and in my classes at Harvard. And Acely has taken AI, put it with the SAT practice questions to give you this unrivaled experience where you can actually practice, get hints, select difficulty. So you're starting out easy, getting harder and harder. This allows you to do that kind of daily practice and get in the mode of things, which will really, really help you. And also, they have a diagnostic mode. You can alleviate your test anxiety by doing full length tests. I talk about this all the time on my channel. The number one thing that I recommend you to do, besides, practicing and learning these rules, is to actually sit down before your test and take a full length exam. It will give you a strong idea of the pace you need to be at, the actual test taking, these little minute details where you need to drink water and pick up your pencil and all of these things. They sound really trivial, but I swear if you actually take full length practice tests, it helps a ton. And so part of my test prep schedule when I was studying for my ACT, I literally just took a ton of practice tests. And Acely is the perfect tool for that because they provide you with those full length tests, not like section by section, full length tests, but they time you as well and mirror the actual testing environment for especially this digital SAT where it's literally online, right? Practice that actual environment with Acely. So I'd highly encourage you to start with a free trial by heading to the link down in the description below and also using my promotional code, which will offer you a discount. And the return on investment here, the ROI, is just amazing compared to spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on, test prep courses or something like that. You get everything here. You get a custom AI tutor, you get a study plan, you get to test, easy, medium, difficult types of questions. You get full length diagnostic tests as well as, basically unlimited questions. There's 4,000 plus, so I don't imagine you going over that at all. So you can practice every single day and put these rules that I'm teaching you into practice and score better. So check the link in the description or pinned comment once again, and let's get into rule number 7, which is about additional comma uses. So commas keep coming up. One other way to use it is to separate items in a list. And arguably, this is the most common. So you've probably seen this a ton, like Rishabh ordered carrots, apples, and bananas. But if you don't know already, this is the form you would do it. You have to have the comma after each word except the last word. And so this is applying to 3 or more words, right? So if you just say Rishabh ordered carrots and apples, you don't need a comma there. But 3 or more words, you do carrots, comma, apples, comma, and then your final word. You can also use them to separate adjectives whose order could be reversed. Adjectives are those describer words, if you don't remember from, grammar class way back, right? Rishabh is a cool, comma, smart individual. How this would sound, right? Rishabh is a cool, smart individual. There is that intentional pause there where you need that comma. You can't just say Rishabh is a cool, smart individual. That would not look correct, nor does it sound correct. So I would highly, just look at this, sound it out, and imagine selecting this choice on your test. I think it's pretty straightforward if you sound it out and recognize that there's a pause there when you're having 2 or more adjectives. And that's pretty much it. Now onto rule number 8. This is really high ROI, and I think if you don't know these, it can improve your score very rapidly. So to briefly go over these 3 are very similar. It's, there, and whose. So for it's, in everyday conversation, we say like, it's black, it's white, it's red, right? But when you do that, you secretly have this apostrophe here, which is actually shortening the 2 words, it is. So you're saying it is black, it is white, and that's where you have that apostrophe. Versus indicating possessive, in which case you would say like, let's say you're talking about a cat, its fur was black, and there it's possessive. Similar here, we have there, but there's an apostrophe. Secretly, we're trying to say they are. So they're short. Well, actually, you're saying they are short. And then the second there here is possessive. So that's relating to something. And this could be, Bob went to school today. Their backpack was black. right? You're indicating a possessive for something. And then the final there, this one's really straightforward. It's just there are 4 mice or something like that. And that one should be distinguished from the other two. Make sure you know these spellings. And then the final one here I have is whose and whose. Similarly, once again, this apostrophe is actually meaning who is. So, take that as you will. And whose is the possessive one. So you can come up with your own example sentences. I don't want to belabor this anymore because it's very similar to these other ones I just described. And then I also included these plural nouns here just to give you an example. So when we're dealing with, like, let's say the cell, like the fundamental unit of biology, right? So the cell's wall was thick. So there you're indicating one cell. But let's say you're talking about multiple cells, where that's where you have this weird apostrophe thing after the word. So it's like cells is, right? Instead of saying cells apostrophe and then another S, because it like ends in an S, you just kind of concatenate it to the single apostrophe here. And this can come in multiple different forms, like dresses, like you're talking about multiple dresses, but something that's possessive to those dresses would be dresses and then apostrophe. Rule number 9 is about compound subjects, but here my rule is literally just to sound it out. If you say these in your head, it's going to make sense. So pause the video here and just try sounding it out. I think memorizing all these different grammar rules, like what is a compound subject and so on, will take really, really long time. It's way easier for your time and sanity to just try saying it out loud and see if they sound right. Rule number 10 is verb tenses, and this is really important. You probably know this from like grade school, but you want to maintain tenses in a sentence. So, for instance, I'm going to skip ahead here just for a second. Let's say something was in the past. Well, you want to maintain that, indication for the entire sentence. So published is in the past tense, right? So you would say published. Let's say you were talking about running. That's, Rishabh is running a YouTube channel. So then throughout the sentence, you want to keep that consistent. Rishabh is running, dancing, recording, singing. Not Rishabh ran and is recording and danced and is singing, right? That doesn't really make sense. You just keep the tense the same throughout the sentence. And as you can see here, I have a little hack for you, and that's if you're dealing with the word for or since in a sentence, there you have to use have been. So as you can see, for and since, it kind of indicates like the past tense, and so there the proper adjustment here would be to say have been instead of are, because are indicates something that is currently true. When you're dealing with for and since, it's kind of currently true but also in the past, so you say have been. And then the final part of this is about these one word past form, and this is to describe a past action that has occurred. So if you just have like one past action here, you would want to use one word to describe it. So Rachel Carson blanked her Silent Spring. Instead of saying has published Silent Spring, because it's a past action, you just say published. And by the way, the reason why I'm highlighting this one in particular is just because it has higher error rates, and so that's why I'm including it in this video. This next one is really confusing, and it's about passive voice. If you've ever used the tool Grammarly, which is like this online software, it highlights some sentences and will say, hey, you're using a passive voice here. And while it may seem like, hey, I'm not like grammatically incorrect here, it just makes more sense to not be passive, and you want to kind of be more assertive here in this conversation. Many people who seriously consider pursuing a career in politics decide against doing so because they are concerned about maintaining their privacy. Sounds great. But if you instead say, in politics, decide against doing so because concerns are had by them, that just sounds kind of weird. You know that something is true, but you're not just stating it. It's like you're skirting around it. And that's an indication of passive voice. So if you see a couple sentences, they all seem kind of correct, choose one that sounds the best and that is being less passive. Rule number 12 is about parallel structure. Basically here, once again, like you can kind of sound these ones out. Rishabh Jain is running, sing, and dancing. No, it doesn't make sense. Rishabh Jain is running, singing, and dancing. So keep those ings throughout. If it's like a verb, verb, verb. If it's a noun, noun, noun. Same thing, make sure to keep it parallel so they all sound the same. And that's the best way to put it. I think if I belabor this too long, it's not worth you just doing practice questions in place of listening to someone yap about those different grammar modifiers and things. So let's move on to dangling modifiers. And this one has a funny word, but basically, if you're saying something is born in 2004, the next word, you have to make it pertain to what is being said. So if you say born in 2004, computers were Rishabh's hobby, you kind of understand, yeah, like you're describing Rishabh's because obviously computers came way before. But in that case, you need to have Rishabh's directly after what is being born in 2004. Rule number 14 is about faulty comparisons. We're almost here. So this one is really tricky, and it comes up on the ACT even, because I know this because I remember learning this rule for my ACT. And basically, if you're comparing two things, like YouTube videos and Bob, that's faulty because YouTube videos are not akin to Bob. But you would, in this case, you would actually be comparing the TikToks of Bob or the videos that Bob made or videos of Bob to the YouTube videos of Rishabh Jain. So you're not comparing Bob directly to videos because those are two different things. It's faulty. So you need to make sure that you're properly describing what of Bob to compare. And so here's another example that is slightly different and, in my opinion, probably easier. Rishabh has videos that are nearly as good as Acely. Here it's very clear to spot that Acely is a platform, right? So how can you compare that directly to videos? Well, we want to say the correct forms would either be to say Acely's or as good as those of Acely to indicate we're talking about videos here. Rule number 15, quantity words. This is a super easy formula to just kind of memorize here. If you're dealing with plural words, make sure to use the words number, many, and fewer. If you're dealing with singular, use amount, much, and less. So there were fewer subscribers, not less subscribers. So speaking of subscribing, rule number 16 is to subscribe whenever you have high quality videos. And if you genuinely appreciated or enjoyed this video, I would highly, highly appreciate you to subscribe in return. You have 5 seconds to do that. Also, press the thumbs up button. It literally takes 0.1 seconds, and once again, it helps me so much so that I can keep making high quality videos as opposed to like clickbaity videos that just waste your time without providing actual actionable advice. That being said, some actions for the end of this video. One is to try the Acely tool. The link is in the description and pinned comment below. Also, please get off YouTube. For preparation, use actual tools like Acely or practice tests because this test is very important for college admissions and for scholarships, and you need to be careful here. So don't just keep getting in the spiral of watching more and more YouTube videos. Actually put this into practice by using a tool like Acely. And finally, when you're practicing, print out the Grammar Rules PDF in the description down below, completely free to download. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. And I hope you appreciated the fact that I kept it to the point. And I would really appreciate a subscribe in return. With that, I'll see you guys next time.